The Agenda is powered by DART, Delaware's transit service, moving forward.
Welcome to The Agenda. Today we continue our series of interviews with candidates for Governor of Delaware. Joining us is Mike Ramone, a Republican candidate. In a state where it has historically been challenging for Republicans to win statewide elections, Mike brings a unique perspective shaped by his years of small business ownership and as a state representative. Unlike his opponent, Mr. Ramone has been a legislative leader within the state legislature. In this interview, we'll focus on one of the most critical issues facing Delaware, education. Despite spending more per pupil than the national average, Delaware is still at the bottom 5% of states for educational performance. The state ranks among the worst in the country for the elementary and middle school proficiency levels. In 22 and 23 school year, only 24% of 8th graders were proficient in math, and 41% were proficient in English and language arts. We'll explore Mr. Ramone's vision for improving our schools and providing a better future for our students, just as we did with his opponent, Matt Meyer. Our goal is to give you a clear sense of where both candidates stand on Election Day and what is their approaches. Mr. Ramone, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kerwin. How are you?
I'm great. I'm
appreciate
great.
it.
I wanted to put this together, and I'm very thankful for you and Mr. Meyer saying yes to this. I understand that as a candidate, you have a lot going on. Mm-hmm. You're going up and down the state. I get it. But education, and the viewers know, is something that I'm not backing down on. I can't change the opinion of you. I can't change the opinion of Mr. Meyer. But what I can hopefully change is how you foresee the issues. Mm-hmm. And one of the issues that we are passionate here about at DETV is education. So we asked Mr. Meyer a series of questions, and through paraphrasing and what have you, we're going to try our very best to ask you the same set of questions.
Absolutely.
I believe it's important, especially before Election Day, that our viewership knows exactly where you stand on these issues. There should not be a question when they pull a lever for either you or Mr. Meyer, your stance on education. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, as a legislator already, you know firsthand about education here in the state of Delaware. You know how much it costs. I think we're close to $3 billion in education out of about 300,000 students roughly, and I'm concerned, mm-hmm. to say the least. And right now, I'm not sure if we can sustain our education system the way that it is. So I'm very anxious to know, one of my first questions is your day one plan for education. In a hypothetical situation, and I presented this to Mr. Meyer as well, you take your first day of office, what are your actions towards education? What are you going to do?
Kerwin, thank you. The first and most important thing with education is we just have to realize what we've been doing for the last 32 years with one party, one set of eyes, one group of thinking has not worked. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. Mm-hmm. Our city has been ignored. Although the numbers you said are astoundingly horrible, 76% of the children aren't able to pass at a reading level when they go to move to the next level. We have I think 2 schools very close to us here where less than 5% of the children can read at reading level. 5 out of every 100 children we're pushing along even though they can't keep up because we did not give them the support they needed before we moved them into 4th grade. My day one started 18, 19, 20 years ago when I first ran. I ran on education. Mm-hmm. I ran against the Senate Pro Temp who's still in there, and I lost. But the reality is we haven't fixed anything. And whenever we try to, we put together another committee or another initiative or another what I call babysitting service where we keep people busy. Education doesn't need another $800 million. People will not be able to provide the tax for that. What education needs is for someone to be brave enough to tear off the stack of Band-Aids on our education system that we use, these $800 million or more Band-Aids. Education doesn't need Band-Aids, Kerwin. It needs surgery. When we rip the Band-Aids off, that patient's septic and is dying. It's not going to make it through more Band-Aids. So for me, day one already started. I have a vision. We do stop automatic promotion to fourth grade and moving children that don't have the ability to be successful in the fourth grade up, and then they sit and hide in the back of the classroom because they're embarrassed. That's not a good way to get a child educated. We have teachers who are awesome teachers, but to make more money, they have to leave teaching and go into administration. So our best teachers are motivated to get out of the classroom. That's not a smart way to grow education. Pay our teachers more, focus on our children more, and make sure Delaware, being one of the lowest states in the nation, for every tax dollar we take that actually gets into the classroom with the child and the teacher, we need to give autonomous control to the principals. Let the principals run their school, empower them. Karen Peterson and I, Senator Peterson, had been in for several years. When I first got elected, one of my biggest issues was I don't see how we can use 19 school districts, a Department of Education, and a Secretary of Education who also have entire staffs to run a little tiny state like Delaware. San Diego County has one district with the same amount of children as we have 19. And don't forget, 19 districts mean 19 superintendents, 19 assistant superintendents, 19 secretaries, or actually that would be probably 38 secretaries.
19 different curriculums.
19 different curriculums, 19 different disciplinarians, 19, everything that you don't have in that classroom with the teacher and the child, you need that many more, and sometimes more than that. It's not functional. It's not sustainable. The spending we've spent in this state is not sustainable in any levels of our government because the government's the biggest employer in the state. Problem number one, especially when you have a little state. But for education, the children are the future of us being able to have a strong, smart state. You heard my visions before. Let's bring some fintech companies into Delaware. Let's continue to do the biotech and the corporate structure in the world. You know, we have a very critical situation where people are coming in from outside of our state trying to have influence with the amount of money they're giving to candidates to be able to push a agenda. If that agenda takes away some of these sectors, we're even going to have less money for education. So right now, we need to strengthen the structure we have with local control. And I believe that local control starts in the high schools and trickles down, not in a superintendent in a school district. I think we can have much more supportive environments, much more flexibility of spending, and much more, what I would say is measures by which we keep facilities not profitable, but efficient. In other words, two of my districts, Red Clay, Christina, for years I've been in Dover listening to the craziness. Now you go to a Christina board meeting and you bring popcorn and beverages because it's like a horror show. It's absolutely ridiculous. You watch them until 1, 2, 3 in the morning. The one thing they forget to talk about is the children. That's why they're there. We've lost it. It's just grown into a beast that's no longer effective. No one will ever be able to make the correct modifications to the education system in Delaware if they're concerned about being reelected for something. Whether it's to be reelected as a mayor, whether it's to some of the opponents on the other side, maybe want to be congressperson, senator sometime, vice president, president. No, let's just worry about schools. Let's just worry about Delaware. I'm old enough that when I'm done my term as the governor, I'm going to be a pop-up. But between now and then, I'm going to do everything I can to make our schools the best, make our businesses the best, do everything I can to help Delaware be the best place to live. And then I'm going to be a very proud pop-up because I'm going to watch a whole generation of children get education, not get social promotion, get rid of this crazy testing procedures we have, these extracurricular activities that the teachers have to go to. We have computer-based training for our children, but yet we have to take teachers around for in-service and do all that. We've just lost our way. So education needs to be reconfigured.
Going back to it, Mike, what would you do? Your first thing, you're governor now. You've done with the campaign. You know that people are biting at your heels in regards to education. What are you going to do?
When elected in November, the first thing I will do, I have a very good group of people who were superintendents, who were principals, who are teachers or were teachers. They will all come together and we will reconfigure the way education needs to look to get the most value out of every dollar going into that child's classroom. If we have a mechanism by which you have 3 high schools in one district, that we have enough children to fill 2 and 1 can be closed, think how much money you just saved if you closed a high school and moved all those children. Now people are going to say, well, which one are you going to close? And all the parents are going to be upset. If I take 75% of the funding that I saved on that building and I put it into those 2 schools to help those children, the parents won't be too upset because I'll have a denser teacher to student ratio. I'll have more prioritization on modifications and running the schools. I don't have to worry about wasting money on heaters and air conditioners, HVACs, grounds, grass, all that goes away. Not to mention, maybe that building's then renovated for even nicer, better high school. Delaware has never factored into 2 major issues that happen in education. One, a growing community has to keep schools coming in with the growth of the community. Unfortunately, often we wait for the growth to be there before we put the school in, so you have overcrowding already. You already have a dysfunctional environment. We need to set up a way that we are building in front of population growth, not after. And we have to find a way that we rescind when there's population decline. How can we have population decline in certain districts, but we still have the same amount of schools, and we've opened an enormous number of charter schools? Why do we have charter schools that have waiting lists long enough that they could double the size of the school, but we don't provide the funds to double the size of the school?
So are you recommending charter schools take a bigger role in
No,
education?
what I'm recommending is schools that are successful and oversubscribed to, whether growth of a community, like maybe Appoquinimink, or simply the ability of the school, the success of the school and people wanting to go there. We need to find a way to enhance those possibilities. Help more people go to those places when they want to go. Don't say, oh, we're only taking this much because it's a charter. Don't say we're only going to do this because it's a charter. Charters were developed simply to be able to facilitate an environment that enabled children to go into an environment where they had more of their strengths could be used more. Cab Calloway of the arts, DMA, children who maybe wanted to get into the military or need a little more discipline. Wilmington Charter for mathematics. Every one of them was supposed to have a definition of what they're doing. If they're doing that and they have a very dynamic attraction to it, why aren't we supporting it and letting more children go there rather than people being upset that they can't get into a school that they really want to go to? We have schools that people can't get into. We have schools that people can't get out of. Why would the single mother down the street, have to go to the school where you only get 3 to 5% of the children able to read after their 3rd grade because she's going to work and she has 3 other kids to take care of and she can't drive them across an hour and a half to the other side of Christina or over to Red Clay to another school? That's not right. That's just so broken. I am only the visionary. I am only the person that will come up with the ideas. I will never be the smartest guy at the table. And I'm not going to sit here and tell a bunch of teachers and principals and superintendents how it needs to look. But what I am going to do is I'm going to give them the opportunity that we're going to bring out the whiteboard that's blank. We're starting over. What do you think it needs to look like? Now, there's one very powerful union out there. They call themselves the Teachers Union. This path forward may get them nervous for certain reasons. I don't think it's necessary. We have a shortage of teachers right now anyway. It would more enable people to make more money from the bottom to the top, so we would keep the best teachers rather than states around us purging our great teachers. And more important, it would give us an opportunity to focus on what we're supposed to be doing, and that's educating children. If a child gets to 3rd grade and that child's just not reading at 4th grade level, they should be given the opportunity to stay in summer school. And if they still aren't, they should be able to repeat 3rd grade. Oh, it's socially stigmas. Where I went to school, 2 children did not move to the next grade when I went from 3rd to 4th grade. They're still my friends. We still have talked all the way through school. They were the best ones in all the sports teams. I don't know what social, detriments it had. But what we're doing now is we push them up to 4th grade and they find a chair somewhere where they can sit and hide so the teacher doesn't focus on them. I don't need a political career, Kerwin. I'm going to do this because I want Delaware to be better. I don't need to keep a union happy. I need the kids who were failing to not be failed anymore.
Let me ask you a question. I'm picking up on a vibe. Correct me if I'm wrong. You seem to have a very business approach to how you would legislate. Today we're just talking about education, but in previous conversations, you've had a very business side of things. I've asked the same question to Mr. Meyer. I'm asking it of you in regards to the supplemental programs that the Department of Education and the school districts use as supplements, excuse the redundancy, to assist teachers and do some community advocacy and outreach. My personal opinion, mine only, is that some of those are being funded and are ineffective. Despite them meeting the requirements of the grants and all the things that they have to do to be good contractors or good vendors, there still comes down to whether or not you're effective. To me, my opinion, it seems as though that these programs are being funded almost on default. And millions of dollars is being poured into them. Not so much of that is being, I would say, beneficial to the end user. What is your opinion about this? Do you see this as an issue? And if so, what would you do to fix it?
The easiest way for me to address that without being negative, I'm not that guy. I want to look at what can we do better. I don't need to define what hasn't gone so well. We need to create an environment where there's levels of accountability, where if we're investing in our children, every tax dollar, what are we doing for that investment? Is it a business? Well, if it is a business, the child's a product, and our products are failing. The parents are there to support the child to the level they can. But with a socioeconomically diverse state, every parent doesn't have the same ability to give the support that certain children may need. So what do we do? The first major flaw is we count a child as a unit, or a special unit, or a this unit, or that unit. And all these different classifications gives that child different levels of money for the school to be able to be successful. I might suggest a total different approach. We give a school a certain amount of money, and the principal decides how he wants that school to be set up to do it. Great principals are not always going to be great teachers. But right now, the pool of where we're taking most of our administrative people is out of the classrooms because of their experience. I don't think that's a detriment, but I don't think it's a necessary attribute in their resume to enable them to move on. I believe we should go back to what we used to have. We used to have a principal school, a school for principals that would go to be able to be qualifying for principals, not just taking people who we thought would be good. The portion of what you're suggesting is one of the largest crux of education. We can't just do things because we've always done them. I'm not going to get into another whole topic, but very much reminiscent of grant and aid. Well, we always gave them this, but we're going to give them that. What are their deliverables? Who are they helping? How are they saving the state spending money on these nonprofit worlds? All of those attributes. Same thing with education. But it needs to be done at the school level, with a person who's running, quote, if you want to say, the business of the school, with the money and the financing to give them the flexibility to guarantee success, not enhance probability of failure. We have done so much to make it so difficult and complicated for our teachers to be successful. No wonder so many are leaving. For me, it's really simple. You take each school building, you start at a high school level, you bring in middle schools or elementary schools that all feed into that like we used to do in the old days. That worked. We had Dickinson High School, you had Skyline and Stanton, went to Dickinson, you had Lord Little, Heritage, Linden Hill, and I can't remember the fourth one, that all went to Skyline or Stanton. It was predictable. Everybody knew where they were going. Now we're taking bits and pieces of people and shuffling them all around. One of the most difficult times for a child's growth to stay on a good track, an educational track, is often when they go from middle school to high school, because it's a whole different farm of kids, and then they sometimes blend in a community that they never blended in. Sometimes at that point, I know this, that's when your dyslexia or some of your hyperactivity characteristics start kicking in that 6th, 7th grade, 8th grade. And then you're getting put in another school, and all of a sudden you're apprehensive. You're not confident anymore. I was in my elementary school, and I was the best kid in the school in math, really good in English, really good in history, never got anything lower than a B, normally got A's. By the time I got into middle school and going into high school, I realized that my reading wasn't as quick, and I had to go back and read it again and so forth. And that's when I realized I had some of that dyslexia. But then I went to my high school, and what that school did, that principal, never heard of it before, broke us into phases. It was a larger quantity of children. They had 5 phases, and I was in phase 5, which is the highest of every single thing that had to do with math, business class, mathematics, algebra, trig, whatever. But on the English side, I was in late phase 3s because of my reading was a little slower. The history, I was a little lower. The point was, when I got out, I knew where I was strong, and I was educated to my highest level of ability in that area. So I always use this analogy. My cup was full, right? We have so many children whose, depending on the size of their cup, they never get full. And I don't mean just the big cups aren't getting full. Some of the very little cups aren't getting full, because we have children in a room that we're just putting there for social engagement, but we're depriving the child the ability of educating them at the level of their ability to absorb the education. That doesn't mean put them away in a room the whole time by themselves. There's still integration, there's still movement, but prioritization of putting them in a room where they feel that they're in a room with their peers, where they can all perform and be successful together. I do think there needs to be a critical mass of people within the school. So when you have high schools that only half or 2/3 full, it's harder. But I do think it's something we need to do, and I don't think it's any more expensive than what we're doing now from what all the people who have done this in other states and can show you best practices at work do. We need to look at what's working across our country and digest it in the smallest, fastest, easiest state in the nation to be able to do it in without worrying about anybody else. Unions, you remember, there's an executive branch and a legislative branch, so we have to work together. I understand that. But somebody needs to take the bullet, and somebody needs to be in the front.
Is that someone in our last moments here, the Department of Education? Do you believe that the Department of Education needs to be rechartered?
I believe we do not need a Department of Education, a Secretary of Education in 19 school districts. How we blend that and reconfigure it, I'll let the people in those departments all sit together with me and explain how they think that moves forward. But we have so much redundant expense before we even get out of how do you run the schools. It's anybody who looks at it, it's crazy. You gave the numbers, in the top 5 in spending, in the bottom 5 in results. But when you look at the cost of living in Delaware, the schools that have higher spending than us, Connecticut, New York, very expensive states. Mm-hmm. The states have results lower than us, New Mexico, Mississippi, other states.
There's not many of them that have lower than us.
3 or 4. But so my point is, you're saying we're 4th or 5th here. No, when you add it together, bang for the buck of what we're charging people in the state of Delaware in taxes to help give our children healthy educations, we're number 1 on the bottom. Nobody spends as much as we do in a level of cost of living of what we have and get the results that we get. No one is worse. That's a catastrophe. That, in my words, is a crisis. To quickly just address what you brought up a few times, and I'm trying to be kind to not prioritize one important, we have a lot of crises in Delaware. Mm-hmm. But we're talking about education. Some of the other crises can be mediated if we fix the first crisis of education. Mm-hmm. So education is probably going to be the priority crisis. But my concern is we can't wait until January to start this. It's got to start November 6th, 7th,
I call it
8th.
Flash to bang, right? We have some things that need to be done right now. They need to be taken care of right now. Some of the things that we need to change are going to take 10 years, 5 years. And we have to deal with that. Mm-hmm. We have to be honest, very honest with the constituents that, hey, this isn't going to, it took us a while to get into this mess. It's going to take us a while to get out of it. We've just recently seen that with our country's economy.
Right.
But at the same time, some of these issues can be taken care of right away. So I urge Mr. Meyer and I urge you the same way, that moving forward, we need to see something right now. As a parent that has children in the school system, as a taxpayer, as just a resident of the state of Delaware, we need to see something big right now.
Hey, Kerwin, we talk about choice, right? In so many things in life. But so many people don't have a choice for their child's education. And someone said, well, do you believe in vouchers? I believe in everyone having a choice to go to a school that can give them a fair education. They don't have that. Do you give a tax credit to them, or do you do something to help create more options for them? Yes. Or do you fix the problem? I'll come in November and start working. I get sworn in January. I've got that whole beginning of the year the team that we put together in November and December will start looking, getting things done, quickly put together task force that will make education a better place, decide what teachers should really be paid to get great teachers to stay in the classroom, decide how we bring real principals to school, how do we give autonomy to each high school and trickle-down area for autonomy as opposed to a district of 14, 15,000 children, create an environment where we can support the parents that need more support because of the personal situation, but those who have more independence, we allow them to exercise that. If we're going to keep charter schools in the mix, then we find a way to expand the charter schools that are well received, and the ones that aren't, hold them accountable. We've done that. We closed one in Newcastle, but we also have to do that with public schools. If they can't get results for children, we should not be putting children in those buildings. It's just wrong. It's inappropriate for the children. And it's a lot of undertones of socioeconomic strife that we're not being a fair state, and we need to do a much better job of being fair.
Mr. Ramone, thank you so much for bringing this. I think that you've enlightened the constituents about your thoughts on education. We try to keep it as fair as we could between both candidates.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your information.
Thank you, my friend.
We appreciate it.
Thanks.
Tonight, now you've heard from both candidates for governor for the state of Delaware. Most pressing issues facing our state is education. We've outlined the facts. Delaware spends more per student than the national average, yet we are ranked among the lowest in the country for educational performance. In my opinion, Kerwin's opinion only, the Department of Education is ineffective, and major change must be done. It is needed. It's overdue. Our economic future depends on the strength and resilience of our education system. As Delawareans, we should be outraged, absolutely outraged, by what we've allowed to happen at our schools. We need accountability. More than that, we need consequences and transparency. It's essential in this process. The Delaware way, the notion of settling for what is comfortable and familiar, simply isn't working anymore when it comes to education. We must be innovative. We must be brave, and we must commit to real solutions if we're going to fix this. And remember, the power of change lies in the power of your vote. If you ever wondered whether or not your vote is important, here's the evidence. Citizens, Delawareans, I need for you to vote as though your livelihood and your future stability depends on it. Legislators, I urge for you to be as angry as your constituents. Thank you for watching the agenda this evening, and be sure to stay tuned for more from the candidates as we continue to bring you conversations that matter. Be safe, Delaware. We'll see you next time.